All right, welcome back. So, over the last few explainers, we have really dug into how our digital lives are shaping us. I mean, at every single stage of life, from being a little kid all the way up to our senior years. Today, we're going to zoom out. We're going to look at the entire map, connect all the dots, and really synthesize the most critical patterns from that whole journey. Let's dive in. Yeah, think of this as us pulling way, way back to see the whole picture. We're not looking at isolated moments anymore. We're looking at our relationship with technology across our entire lifespan. And when you do that, some really critical patterns start to pop out.
Okay, now before we jump into the review, it's really important we set the stage for the information we're about to cover. Everything in this series was based on some pretty extensive research, and a lot of that research talks about results related to gender, age, and different societies. Now, it's so important to remember that everyone is unique, right? Social research is all about finding patterns and connections which can lead to these general statements about social norms. But, and this is a big but, people and social systems are just incredibly complex. So when we talk about generalized data, we have to keep these limitations in mind. And this applies to pretty much all studies on social stuff, mental health, and brain development. So please, we really encourage you to do your own independent research and figure out what's most helpful for you.
So let's start our review right where life begins, those foundational years of childhood. As we've talked about, this is a time of just explosive brain development. It's like the architecture of our future minds is being built brick by brick. And it's right here in this incredibly delicate phase that digital exposure introduces some of its biggest risks.
This number it's just startling. A huge JAMA study found that for preteens, even what they call moderate social media use, we're talking about an hour a day, was linked to a 15% drop in reading comprehension. That's a huge, measurable hit to a skill that is the foundation for literally all future learning.
And this slide right here gets at the why. It's a concept called the displacement effect. Basically, a child's time is a zero-sum game. Every single hour they spend just passively scrolling or watching videos is an hour that gets displaced. It's an hour they're not spending on things like interactive play or deep reading. And those are the very activities that build up their executive function, the critical skills for planning, for focus, and for self-control. We also saw that from this super early age, really distinct gender patterns start to show up. The research consistently pointed to girls being more vulnerable to the emotional stuff, the social comparison anxiety, the constant need for validation. Boys, on the other hand, well, they showed higher risks for attention issues and compulsive gaming behaviors that, frankly, led to them checking out of school. So, these early patterns kind of set the stage for our next big chapter, the teenage years. And here, man, the pace just quickens and the stakes get so much higher. This is a time of peak vulnerability, both neurologically and socially. And what we found is that smartphones act like this powerful amplifier for all the chaos that is already part of being a teenager. This concept right here is absolutely key to understanding the teenage brain. Think of the prefrontal cortex gap like this. You've got the gas pedal of a Formula One race car. That's their super sensitive emotional reward system. But it's paired with the brakes of a toddler's bicycle. That's their still developing impulse control. It's a total mismatch that creates, well, a perfect storm. And you better believe social media platforms are designed meticulously to exploit that very gap. They create this powerful neurological trap, and you can see it right here in this feedback loop. A notification gives a little dopamine hit, the brain's reward system lights up, and boom, the behavior is reinforced. And with that underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, the teen brain it can't fight the impulse. It's what drives that compulsive checking we see all the time. This led to one of the most troubling and honestly profound findings we looked at. Despite being by far the most digitally connected generation in all of human history, late teens, we're talking 16 to 19, they report the highest rates of loneliness of any age group. It's this crazy paradox that shows that just because you're connected online doesn't mean you have real, fulfilling human connection. Okay, so from the pressures of being a teen, we move right into the overload of being an adult. In these decades, smartphones aren't just for fun anymore. They become these indispensable tools for managing, well, everything: work, family, life. But as we discovered, that integration comes at a really significant cost. I am willing to bet this daily cycle looks painfully familiar to a lot of you. We called it the blurred boundary crisis. See, the smartphone hasn't just bent the rules between work and personal life, it's completely vaporized them. Work follows us everywhere, and it creates this state that psychologists call continuous partial attention, where you're never ever fully present in any single moment. And this slide, this really puts a number on that feeling of mental exhaustion. The average adult makes over 200 decisions a day just through their phone. Which email is urgent? Is this notification important? Should I read this? Every single one of those tiny micro decisions drains our cognitive resources. And that leads to what we call decision fatigue.
And what's so crucial to remember is that this adult behavior, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. We saw really clear evidence that a parent's phone use is one of the most powerful models for their child's own future habits. The patterns of distraction and overload that we set as adults, well, they risk creating this intergenerational cycle of digital dysfunction.
All right, moving into the final stage of our review, the tone shifts a little bit, becomes more reflective. For seniors, technology really plays this dual role. We looked at how it can be both a vital lifeline, a source of connection, and at the same time, a huge source of complication and stress.
And it's so important to start with the good stuff, the genuine life-enhancing benefits. For so many seniors, smartphones are a powerful, powerful tool against isolation. They let them connect with family far away, they provide access to health resources, and they even offer cognitive stimulation that can be genuinely protective for the brain. But right alongside those benefits, there's a big challenge. So many seniors struggle with technology, and this quote just powerfully reframes that whole struggle. It's not a personal failure, it's a design failure. It's the failure of a digital world that was largely designed by the young, for the young, without even thinking about the needs of an aging population.
Okay, now for the big finish. Let's bring it all together. In this last section of our review, we're going to synthesize those big, overarching themes that we saw again and again, cutting across every single stage of the digital lifespan, from age 5 to 70 and beyond.
One of the most consistent patterns we saw, no matter the age group, was this geographic divide. This table sums it up perfectly. If you live in an urban area, you're dealing with sensory overload, but you probably have more resources. If you're in a rural area, you often struggle with bad connectivity and a high risk of both geographic and digital isolation. It's a totally different set of problems.
This right here was maybe the strongest finding of the entire series. Across almost every single age group, we saw these persistent, distinct gender-based patterns. Girls and women consistently showed higher vulnerability to the social and emotional pressures of comparison, while boys and men faced higher risks when it came to addiction and social withdrawal. So after all this, the big question is, what do we do with it? Well, the research points to a few really clear, actionable takeaways. Things like, hey, maybe we should delay smartphone ownership for kids until they're at least 14, or fiercely protect sleep by getting devices out of the bedroom. As adults, we need to model and enforce healthy boundaries. And we have to advocate for better, more humane technology design. And that really brings us to the end of our review. We've mapped the entire landscape. We've seen the patterns that cut across our digital lives. The research has made the challenges and the opportunities incredibly clear. So the only question left is the one right here on the screen. Now that you see the patterns, what are you going to do with them?